Welcome to the Chemical Engineering Guys podcast, a show in which we share stories and tips from chemical and process engineers. We talk about student and professional life, as well as important aspects of products, processes, industries, and companies. But more importantly, what are the paths that these unique individuals are taking in this ever-changing world? Let's get started. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the show. And as you probably read from the title, this is going to be a very special episode. There's not going to be any kind of guest or interview. It's going to be, let's say, a break episode. Actually, I was working on an episode, the one on Jefferson Costa. I'm pretty sure that many of you guys know him. He is posting a lot of content online. He has a great program, the In-Process program, which we already talked about that, and we're going to be talking about that in the following episode. But for now, I didn't expect Christmas getting along the publishing, or let's say about the schedule, but here we are. So instead of me publishing this, I want to have a special, let's say, one-on-one chat. And I want to talk about essentially what I have been learning while interviewing fellow chemical engineers, process engineers, and other type of engineers or scientists that I have been able to interview. And unfortunately, guys, I need to tell you that I have a lot of content that will not be able to see the light of the online world. This is essentially because either the guy or the guest had problems with their company, they have some privacy issues, or they cannot get into, let's say, public or online shows, or maybe they're not quite confident on the interview, they didn't like it, or maybe they regretted it, or maybe myself, sometimes I think certain type of interviews don't go quite well, especially for us non-US or let's say non-English speakers. It's kind of hard to get a flawless conversation, and sometimes the language or the fluidity of the language does affect the interview. So, or maybe sometimes I have been interviewing some kind of people that think they have a good fit, and then after the interview I see that the episode is not a good fit. So unfortunately, I tell them, sorry, it was a very pleasant surprise to talk with you. It's great to share stories, but I don't think it's a good fit for the Chemical Engineering Guys podcast. But anyways, guys, I have also learned a lot from fellow chemical engineers and process engineers. I have been interviewing so far maybe 30 persons, and I really learned a lot from them, especially what drives them, what motivates them. What do they think about chemical engineering? Because of course, when we start or hit the record button, we use this mask of, public or going public. But before we record, we talk into very serious stuff. We talk about the future, whether or not we have regrets on studying chemical engineering, on whether or not chemical engineering or the industry itself is actually going to survive, or what are the, let's say, the future elements or skills that the chemical engineer needs to adapt in order to still be a relevant engineer in the field. I've also talked about, or we have shared stories on frustration. We have our stories on why, or some of us, why do we change from industries, from companies, maybe even products. I have one episode in which we talked about a product which was not nice for the environment. And this engineer was very frustrated because he didn't know at the moment that the product was so damageful and hazardous for the environment. And he was so frustrated because he was earning good cash. The actual job was great, good, let's say, not so long commuting hours or times. He had a lot of responsibility, but the product itself was pretty shitty for him. So he eventually changed of company because there was no way he could change areas knowing that he was helping to produce that product. So That's very interesting. And also I have this conversation with a fellow entrepreneur. The episode is going to be coming soon, so stay tuned. We talked about the frustrations on being an employee, especially a process engineer employee, that you cannot take that much vacations, that you always need to be on the plant. It's like a baby. You cannot go away without something getting broken or you needing to fix something. So you need to be always there, need to be there and present. So that's also something that, of course, it's interesting because you see it as your baby, but at the same time, it's not your actual baby because you're not earning the big bucks. You don't have quite huge word on the process or in the products line. If you want to change something, typically it does not depend on the process engineer itself. I've also learned a lot on the future of several industries that I didn't have any idea. Especially when I was a student, I never imagined such industries. So for instance, the food industry, I do know chemical engineers can work on that. But what I have learned a lot is that there is a lot of automation, a lot of process handling in food industry and beverage industry. And the actual food engineers, or let's say the food scientists, do not carry that much or do not get into that actual, let's say, manipulation of equipment. Heat exchange may be okay, but when you go to mass transfer or even reactors, kinetics, the chemical engineer is always going to get always far away compared to this food science, let's say. So that was very curious because when I hear food scientist, I always imagine someone that's way better suited for a, let's say, food process. But what I have learned is that a food process is nothing more than another chemical process. And therefore, a chemical or process engineer will be having great fun. I also learned, this is also a surprise. Well, at the same time, it's not a surprise because I learned this in the industry. But automation is something that it's getting very important. And I do know chemical engineers, most of them study some automation classes, but it's actually just to say that you had some automation or let's say control. But the reality is that we are not quite suited for this type of work. And I do hate, and at the same time, I understand that many syllabus will tell you, well, if you go into an automation process or automation work profile, you will learn there and they will train you. But the whole point of this is, of course, that you want to get graduated and go directly to work. You don't want to learn about something because you already spent 4 years learning about chemical engineering. So for me, it's kind of counterintuitive. But at the same time, I do understand that you can have a, let's say, specialization on automation, because if you end up in oil and gas, maybe drilling, or if you worst end up in a office, well, what was the point of learning all about PLCs and all this type of instrumentation, control loops? It was a waste of time and a waste of money if you had to pay for the course. Okay, what else have I learned? I've learned that we chemical engineers are very well suited for success. I hate to say it, but actually when I open the LinkedIn profiles of my guests, they are rock stars. They seem that they have been doing a great job in academics. They have been doing a great job in getting internships, co-ops. They also have been doing great jobs in getting a first job, a pretty great first job. And of course, there are some exceptions that some of us don't land a perfect job, but they quickly change, maybe after one semester or 1 year, into a way better job. And this is almost the same for all the guests that I have been interviewing all around the world. It doesn't mean only for Americans or Europeans. I have also seen this for Africa. I've also seen this for India, for Pakistan, and of course, some of Latin American friends as well. So I do think chemical engineers earn relatively, let's say, compared to other fellow things that you can study, chemical engineering will definitely help you to get into the top 30% of all graduates if we talk about money. And if that's your drive, or let's say something crucial for you, definitely chemical engineering is something that should be considered. And at the same time, I do think it's something that is not that great, because then you get into the comfort of earning good money, having a respectful job, having great responsibility, but inside you don't like what you're doing, or you want to open a business. But because you're earning so great, you don't want to adventure into entrepreneurship, and well, it's kind of hard to match your salary with that of a company or business. So that's why I don't like, or you could say it's a counterintuitive thing to say, but earning too much money or having these great opportunities will not maybe motivate you to change into another, let's say, life or pathway. You will stick into chemical engineering or something related. And talking about entrepreneurship, I do want to talk with more fellow entrepreneurs, but to be honest, chemical engineering is not quite easy to find entrepreneurs, or at least not quite chemical related, because I do know there's a lot of people that study chemical engineering and end up in something that it's not related to chemical engineering, but it's something of their own. But I want to know people that have open shop, let's say, into something related with chemical engineering. Let's say either consulting or maybe open a process. I do know some friends that started doing some quality control projects and so, but I am still waiting for that guy that tells me I do some process automation on my behalf or my own, or I have a company that simulates processes, or I have a company that designs and implements or EPC construction processes on the industry. I still wait for that, and if you know someone, please let me know so I can interview him or her. It's also something very important. And once talking about him or her, I have been interviewing a lot of male candidates and not so many female candidates. If you have friends or female friends, please let me know if they are willing to share their story, because I do know that we have different perspectives. It's not the same a chemical engineer that goes into the plant and it's a male. I need to say that it's easier for a male going into the industry than for a female. The very fact that there's people not willing to share or work with female, or that there's a friction, that's definitely something that we don't have as a, let's say, male, but as a female is an extra hurdle that they need to get along. What else can I share to you guys? Well, once again, editing takes a lot of time. I take maybe 1 or 2 hours in the interview between having a casual chat and recording, and of course some errors or editing and stuff. But once the files are ready, getting those files into the software, editing them, listening to all the story, it's very, very, I don't know, if I take 1 hour, I definitely take 3 to 4 hours in edition alone. Plus making the clips, plus uploading, plus making the blog post, plus distribution. It's way harder than I thought. So my respects to all those doing some podcast and so on, because it does takes a lot of time. And guys, this is what I have been learning. I will be for sure adding a special episode with other, let's say, more punctual stuff, or let's say more summarized concepts. This is just, let's say, a break or a rant for Christmas Eve. And the future of the podcast, or at least what I see in 2021, I don't want to break this streak. I want to keep posting all Fridays. I want to keep interviewing chemical engineers or process engineers or whatever engineer that can have a fit in the chemical or process industry. I do want to add some video format. I know that we podcasters love only audio, but I'm also always getting this question on when are we getting the video content. Well, it's kind of hard because in Monterrey, I do have some friends and colleagues and I can get more chemical engineers, but that will be very, very, let's say, niche type of chemical engineer. It will be, I don't know, Mexicans that study probably here, they go abroad for an MBA or a master degree, they get back, they get into the top companies here in Mexico, or at least in the northeastern part, Alpha, Cemex, maybe, I don't know, all those companies, and eventually they end up working there. So that's why I don't want to invite that many friends. I want to have diversity, to be more, to be broader, and that you can relate to them. Because also, if you are someone that it's in the USA, well, maybe you don't relate that quite great with someone in Mexico. Or at the same time, if you're from Egypt, well, maybe you don't relate that much to a Mexican. Or if you're from, I don't know, Poland, you will have different ideas than someone from the European area versus a Mexican. So that's my take on that. I will for sure add some relevant stories. I am motivated and very excited to interview people in real life, or let's say to have video content. But for now, the online podcast audio only format will be the dominant format. Also, guys, please do let me know what do you want to have in the show. Do you like short content, long content? In my opinion, and this is very honest, I don't care about length as long as something relevant and as long as it's interesting. I can hear and listen to something 2-3 hours without even pausing, without even going to the bathroom if it's great content. But of course, if it's only 2-3 minutes and it's content that I don't really care about, especially ads, for instance, in the TV or YouTube ads, of course I don't pay attention and I feel how they drain my time. So let me know, what do you think? Do you like short content, 20-minute content, 30, 1 hour? You don't care at all? So that's great on podcast. That I really think it's a special community that love to listen and have the time to listen, either if you're traveling, commuting, or if you're at home, you do home office or study. And yes, I've also gotten a lot of applications from students. Unfortunately, guys, I'm preparing this content for you guys that are students, but I don't think there's a lot, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I don't think there's a lot that we can take out of a student, meaning that I really think that we care about what chemicals engineers will end up doing and how do they feel, because we all need to go through the university and we have been doing that. It's something normal, but the important thing is how to land a job, how to change jobs, what does it feel to be in the field, what does it feel to go to a office job, and all those I think are more relevant stories than what subjects are we taking or whether or not we're going to be doing summer internships and so on. But if you think you have a very interesting profile, don't hesitate to send it. I check all the applications myself, and if I think it's something relevant, please do not hesitate, send it, and I will reply to you with an invitation to the podcast. And guys, I don't want to make this a longer episode. I've also gotten a lot of messages on you asking me when I will be sharing my story. I actually have a special episode that one student needed to interview a chemical engineer, and he thought straight away and told me if I could be that chemical engineer. And I think it would be great to add that as a fellow episode. I share my story on what do I study, pretty similar format. What do I study, where I did my internships, what was my first job, and why did I decide to change into the online world. So that will be also cool. I don't think it's going to be published in the following 2 to 3 months, but I will also prepare that a special episode on myself. Very egocentric as well. So guys, this will be it. Thank you for listening so far. checking here the analytics, we have 180 unique listeners on the last 7 days. I really appreciate it. All those are really very valuable for me because I know chemical engineering is not that sexy to talk about. It's not that easy as fashion or healthcare or gym or cars. But I'm pretty sure that if we take the time and try to do this creatively, we can try to make chemical engineering a little bit more sexy to consume. And hopefully my dream is that chemical engineers have they want to listen to the show, let's say early Friday or at night or on the weekend. They say, I must consume the latest episode of the Chemical Engineering Guys podcast. Anyways, guys, that is all I wanted to share. Merry Christmas to all of you, and I will be publishing maybe one last episode of the year with my upcoming plans, goals for 2021 in the next Friday. So that will be it, guys. Have a very pleasurable, enjoyable holidays. 2020 has been very rough, so please do enjoy these last days of 2020. And let's begin 2021 with our best of all. See you guys and take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And before you go, I will really appreciate it if you take the time to share this podcast with your fellow colleagues, classmates, friends, or really anyone that might be interested on the topic of chemical engineering and its related fields. If you found this content helpful and valuable, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot.